The entire estate went silent, a silence so heavy it felt like the air itself was holding its breath, trembling with dread. Not because someone screamed, not because glass shattered against marble floors, but because someone did something nobody had ever dared to do before. Something that clotted every heart in the room with icy terror and fragile, desperate hope. Right there in the center of that massive living room, underneath those glittering crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people earn in a lifetime, chandeliers that now seem to flicker like 1,000 judgmental eyes, Miss Victoria Hayes, the billionaire's stunning fiancée, raised her hand high in the air, sharp, ready, her manicured fingers trembling with barely contained fury, about to slap another housemaid like she'd done countless times before, each strike leaving invisible scars on souls too afraid to heal. Everyone froze with the kind of paralyzing fear that knots the stomach and burns behind the eyes. The cooks near the kitchen entrance clutched each other, hearts pounding. The cleaning staff with their dusting cloths stood like statues, praying silently. The security guards stationed by the grand double doors felt shame coil in their throats. Even Gregory, the head butler who'd worked there for 20 years and had seen too many tears fall, stopped breathing for just a moment, his old heart aching with helpless sorrow. They all knew what was coming next, knew the sting, the humiliation, the way Victoria's cruelty carved pieces out of you that you could never get back. Victoria always slapped someone when she got angry, and today she was furious, a storm of entitlement and rage that made the grand room feel suffocatingly small. But then something strange happened. Something that would change everything, something that felt like the first crack of light in a tomb sealed for years. A hand shot up and caught Victoria's wrist. Not gently, not fearfully, but firmly, like a young oak tree, refusing to bend even when the storm tries its hardest to break it, like a quiet soul finally screaming enough with every ounce of courage she had left. It was the new maid, Elena Rodriguez, the quiet girl who'd only arrived 3 days ago. The girl nobody expected would even lift her eyes when Victoria walked past, let alone grab the billionaire's fiancé's hand right in front of everyone, her own heart thundering so loudly she was sure the whole room could hear it. But there she stood, holding Victoria's raised hand midair, refusing to let it fall, refusing to let another woman be broken, just for existing. Every single worker in that room gasped a collective inhale of pure, disbelieving wonder, tears springing unbidden to weary eyes. "What?" Victoria shrieked, her voice cracking with shock and disbelief, the sound slicing through the room like a shard of glass. "What do you think you're doing?" But Elena didn't let go. Her hand stayed strong, trembling only slightly now, with the weight of what she'd done. Her warm brown eyes stayed calm, almost peaceful, yet behind that peace burned a fierce, protective fire that had been forged in pain long before she ever stepped foot in this house. And her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft but clear, laced with a quiet, unshakable dignity that made the air itself feel braver. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Elena said quietly, her heart aching for the frightened girl beside her, "but I can't let you hit her." What nobody knew in that moment, what nobody could see through their own stunned tears, was that Marcus Wellington himself, the billionaire who owned this entire estate, stood just outside the hallway. He'd been on his way back from his home office when he heard the commotion, heard the familiar edge of Victoria's rage, and felt that old, sick twist in his gut he'd been ignoring for far too long. He stopped walking, turned his head slowly, and saw the truth he'd blinded himself to, and it hit him like a fist to the chest. His fiancée trying to slap a maid, and the maid stopping her. Marcus didn't move forward. He didn't say anything yet. He just watched, his heart beginning to pound harder in his chest, pound with shame, with dawning horror, with a grief he hadn't let himself feel because something inside him, something he'd been ignoring for months, finally woke up, raw and bleeding and impossible to silence again. If this moment has already gripped your heart the way it's gripping mine, hit that like button and subscribe. It's the quiet way we stand with the Elenas of the world. And then Victoria's next words shook the entire house to its foundation, shrill with wounded pride and panic. "Let go of me," she screamed, her voice cracking into something almost childlike in its desperation. "I said let go right now." But Elena's grip didn't move. Not even an inch, her fingers steady even as her soul trembled with the enormity of what she was risking. That moment, that single moment, would change absolutely everything, would shatter illusions, break chains, and set hearts on a collision course with truth. And then an even louder gasp echoed through the room, because something even more shocking happened next. Something that felt like justice taking its very first breath. Victoria tried to yank her hand away, pulling with all her strength. Her face turned red with humiliation and fury. Her eyes went wide with frantic disbelief. She struggled harder and harder, the queen reduced to flailing helplessness. But still, nothing. She couldn't break free. Everyone stared at this new maid, in complete disbelief, awe and gratitude, blooming in chests that had forgotten how hope felt. And from his spot in the hallway, Marcus whispered to himself, barely audible, his voice thick with self-loathing and wonder, "What kind of woman have I been planning to marry?" And just as he was about to step forward into the room, his legs finally moving, his heart screaming that he could not let this continue, another second, someone else walked in behind him. Someone who had no business being there. Someone whose arrival would expose everything, like a sudden flood of blinding light into a room full of shadows. But before we get to who that was, we need to go back, way back, because everything that exploded in that living room today started long before this moment. Long before Elena ever set foot in the Wellington Estate, started in the quiet aches and hidden bruises of too many hearts. The story really began 3 weeks earlier. Everyone in Atlanta knew about Marcus Wellington, the young tech billionaire who built Wellington Industries from nothing. People loved him because he was humble, generous with his wealth, and always donated to local schools and hospitals, because something in him still remembered what it felt like to have nothing, and that memory made him kind. At 32 years old, he was one of the most eligible bachelors in the entire South, yet loneliness clung to him like a second shadow. But not many people loved his fiancée, Victoria Hayes. Don't get me wrong, Victoria was beautiful. Stunning, actually. Long, dark hair, designer clothes, a smile that could light up any room when cameras were watching. She came from old money, the Hayes family, who owned half the real estate in downtown Atlanta. She was famous on social media, attended every high society event, and always knew exactly what to say to the cameras, knew how to perform perfection, while her heart grew colder with every unearned privilege. But the people who worked inside the Wellington Estate, they saw a completely different woman, saw the monster that lived behind the mask, and it broke something in them every single day. At the estate, Victoria acted like she owned everything, even though nothing there belonged to her. Not yet, anyway, and that not yet tasted like poison on the staff's tongues. She shouted at workers over the smallest things, her voice dripping venom that left welts deeper than skin. She insulted them. She called them stupid, useless, incompetent, each word a lash. And worst of all, whenever she got really angry, she would slap them right across the face. Like they were nothing more than objects she could abuse whenever she felt like it, like their pain was her right. And because every single one of those workers desperately needed their jobs, because they all had families to feed and bills to pay, children's laughter waiting at home, parents growing frail, dreams they couldn't afford to lose, none of them ever dared to say a word. They swallowed the hurt until it became part of their bones. But here's the thing that made it all worse. Marcus never saw any of this, never saw the woman he loved twist into something cruel the moment his back was turned, and that blindness was its own quiet tragedy. Whenever he was around, Victoria completely transformed. She smiled sweetly, her eyes soft with practiced adoration, spoke softly, acted gentle and caring, touching his arm like she was made of tenderness. She fooled everyone outside the house. The media loved her. Marcus's business partners thought she was perfect. His friends believed he'd found the ideal woman, while inside, he felt a hollow ache he couldn't name. But the people who worked inside those walls, they knew the truth. They saw the bullying, the slaps, the cruel threats that left them shaking. The way Victoria would scream at someone for accidentally moving her purse or not folding a towel exactly right, scream, until her victim's eyes glazed with defeated tears. Still, they endured it. The pay was good, better than anywhere else they could work. So they stayed silent, lowered their heads, and accepted the abuse, each day carving another piece of their dignity away. Then one Monday morning, everything shifted like the first faint whisper of a storm that would finally break the sky open. Mrs. Patterson, the head housekeeper, who'd been with the Wellington family for 15 years of biting her tongue until it bled, gathered all the staff in the main kitchen, her kind eyes already heavy with worry for the new soul about to walk in. "Everyone," she announced, her voice tired but kind, cracking just a little with unspoken grief. "We have a new maid starting today. Her name is Elena Rodriguez. She's traveled here from New Mexico, and this is her first time working in a home like this. Please make her feel welcome." The workers glanced at each other with knowing looks laced with pity and dread that made their throats tight. Another new maid. She won't last. Victoria will chase her away, just like all the others, and another light will go out. They'd seen it happen before. Good people who came looking for honest work, eyes bright with cautious hope, only to quit within days because they couldn't handle Victoria's treatment, because some wounds never heal when you have to come back to the knife every morning. But when Elena actually walked into that kitchen, something felt different, like the room itself exhaled in quiet recognition. She was young, maybe 24 or 25, small-framed, with warm brown eyes that had seen too much, yet still held kindness, and long dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore plain clothes and carried a single worn suitcase that spoke of long journeys and stubborn dreams. She looked tired from her journey, bone-deep weary, but when she smiled and said hello to everyone, there was something strong behind those eyes, something unbreakable that made hardened hearts soften. "Hi," she said softly, her voice carrying the faint lilt of home and the weight of everything she'd left behind. "I'm Elena. It's really nice to meet all of you. I'm here to work hard and learn. If I do anything wrong, please just tell me." Her voice was gentle, respectful, humble, even yet beneath it ran a river of quiet steel. The other workers liked her immediately. There was something genuine about her that made their guarded hearts crack open just a little, reminding them what humanity felt like. But they also felt sorry for her, because they knew what was coming, and the thought of this gentle girl being broken made their chests ache with helpless rage. "Listen, honey," whispered Maria, one of the older cooks, who'd been there for 8 years of swallowing screams, her eyes already glistening as she reached for Elena's hand. "You seem sweet, so I'm going to give you some advice." Elena leaned in closer, listening carefully, sensing the tremor of old pain in Maria's voice. "Stay far away from Miss Victoria," Maria continued, her voice dropping even lower, cracking with the memory of every slap she'd taken. "Don't make eye contact when she's angry. Don't talk back, ever. And if she wants to slap you," Maria paused, pain flashing across her face like lightning, "just take it. Don't resist. It'll be worse if you resist." Elena's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of old wounds surfacing behind them, but she only nodded politely, even as her heart whispered fiercely, "Never again." Other workers chimed in with similar warnings, their voices thick with unshed tears. "Keep your head down. Do exactly what she says, even if it doesn't make sense. Never, ever correct her, even if she's wrong. And don't expect Mr. Wellington to help. He never sees what really happens." Elena absorbed all of this quietly, her gentle face unreadable, but inside her chest, something ancient and wounded stirred and roared. She thanked them for their kindness, her voice soft with gratitude and grief, but deep inside, something in her heart whispered that she couldn't allow anyone to treat her or anyone else like a punching bag ever again. Not even someone as powerful as Victoria Hayes. Some lines, once crossed in your own life, could never be uncrossed in silence. Still, she stayed quiet those first 2 days. She worked hard, cleaning rooms until her hands cracked, organizing closets with careful reverence, helping in the kitchen with quiet humming that made the cooks smile through their exhaustion. She avoided trouble. She was polite to everyone, offering small kindnesses that felt like balm on old burns. Until the third day, when everything exploded, when the dam finally broke and truth came roaring out. It started with something so small, so insignificant, that it was almost laughable, yet it carried the weight of every injustice that had ever been swallowed. Victoria had misplaced her diamond bracelet, a Cartier piece worth over $50,000 that Marcus had given her for her last birthday, a gift she'd barely glanced at twice, while others worked their fingers raw for pennies. She came storming into the estate from her morning spa appointment, already in a foul mood, because apparently her massage therapist had used the wrong essential oils or something ridiculous like that. Her rage, a spoiled child's tantrum dressed in couture. "Who touched my things?" she screamed the second she walked through the front door, the sound ricocheting like gunfire through terrified hearts. Workers scattered in every direction like frightened birds, pulses racing, praying her gaze wouldn't land on them. She marched straight into the living room, her high heels clicking loudly against the polished floors like the ticking of a bomb. "Who moved my bracelet?" she shrieked, voice raw with entitlement. "I left it on my dresser this morning." "Where is it?" The housekeepers exchanged nervous glances, fear sour on their tongues. Nobody had touched her bracelet. They knew better than to go near her. Jewelry knew the price of being accused. But Victoria didn't care about logic or truth. She wanted someone to blame, wanted to feel powerful by making someone else feel small. She grabbed one of the younger maids by the arm and shook her violently. "Did you take it?" "No, Miss Hayes," the girl stammered, tears already streaming down her cheeks, body shaking with terror. "I swear I didn't go near your room." Victoria shoved her backward, hard enough to bruise. The girl stumbled but didn't fall, biting back a sob. Then Victoria slapped another maid across the shoulder, hard the crack of it echoing like a gunshot through the room. "Useless, all of you." She spun around, her eyes wild and furious, scanning the room for her next target, chest heaving with ugly, intoxicating power. And then her gaze landed on Elena, the new girl, standing quietly near the window with a feather duster in her hand, sunlight catching the quiet resolve in her eyes. "You," Victoria hissed, pointing directly at her with a manicured finger trembling with rage. "Come here." Elena set down the duster carefully, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest, and walked forward, slowly, calmly, each step a silent vow. "Did you touch my bracelet?" Victoria demanded, stepping so close that Elena could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sour tang of cruelty. "No, ma'am," Elena answered softly but clearly, meeting her eyes for the first time, really meeting them, seeing the frightened child behind the monster and refusing to look away. "I haven't been in your bedroom." Something about the way Elena said it, the tone of her voice calm and unshaken, laced with a dignity money couldn't buy, made Victoria even angrier, made her feel small for the first time in years. "You dare talk back to me!" Victoria's voice rose to a scream, shrill with wounded pride. "I'm not talking back, ma'am," Elena said, still calm, though her heart ached with every trembling breath in the room. "I'm just answering your question." That did it. Victoria's face twisted with rage, pure, ugly, unrestrained. Before anyone could even blink, Victoria raised her hand, HI in the air, ready to slap Elena across the face with all her strength, to break this quiet defiance the only way she knew how. Every worker in that room looked away. They couldn't bear to watch another soul be crushed. They'd seen this happen too many times before, and each time took a piece of them with it. Gregory the butler closed his eyes, tears slipping free. Maria the cook covered her mouth, a broken sound escaping. The security guards shifted uncomfortably but said nothing, shame burning in their guts. And then, the slap didn't land, because Elena's hand shot up and caught Victoria's wrist mid-air, firm, steady, unshaking, fueled by every time she'd been hit, every time she'd been told she was nothing, every promise she'd made to her younger self in the dark. The entire room froze in that instant time itself, seeming to pause in reverence. Mouths fell open. Eyes went wide with stunned, tearful joy. Nobody could believe what they were seeing, could believe someone had finally stood up, that courage had walked in, wearing a maid's uniform. Victoria's face went from red to pale in seconds, all her power draining away, like blood from a wound. She stared at her trapped wrist in complete shock, the shock of someone who'd never been told no. Let go of me," she stammered, voice small and shaking for the first time. But Elena didn't move. Her grip stayed strong, gentle yet unbreakable, her eyes filled with a sorrowful resolve that made Victoria's cruelty look pitiful. "I'm sorry, Miss Hayes," Elena said quietly, voice trembling now, not with fear, but with the weight of every bruised soul watching her. "But I can't let you hit me." And that was the exact moment when everything truly began to unravel, like the first thread pulled on a tapestry of lies, promising to bring the whole thing crashing down in beautiful, terrifying truth. Because while everyone stood frozen in shock, while Victoria struggled to free her hand like a child throwing a tantrum, while whispers started erupting among the staff whispers of awe and gratitude and long-buried hope, something else happened that nobody noticed right away. Two people had just entered the house. One was Marcus Wellington, who'd been coming back from his home office down the hall, heart already pounding with the dawning realization that he'd been a fool. And the other person, the one who stepped in right behind him, was someone Victoria had been terrified would show up, someone whose mere presence made Victoria's carefully constructed world tremble. That person looked at the scene unfolding in the living room, looked at the maid holding the bully's wrist, at the tears of relief on broken faces, and said in a calm but powerful voice that carried the weight of long-held disappointment and righteous fury. So this is how you treat people when nobody's watching. Everyone spun around, hope and dread colliding in their chests. Victoria's entire face drained of color, her world collapsing in a single heartbeat. Marcus's heart nearly stopped in his chest, guilt and gratitude crashing over him like a wave. Because the voice belonged to Miss Catherine Brennan, the woman who had mentored Victoria since she was a teenager, the woman who'd tried to teach her grace but feared she'd failed, the woman who'd trained her in etiquette, business, and social grace. The woman who was the only person in the world Victoria actually feared, because Catherine had seen the potential for goodness in her once, and now saw only the monster she'd become. And she had just witnessed everything. The room went dead silent, a silence so thick it pressed against every chest like a physical weight, suffocating with the raw terror of truths finally clawing their way into the light. Victoria's hand was still trapped in Elena's firm grip, but now her entire body had gone rigid, trembling violently as if ice water had been poured straight into her veins. Her eyes, wide with animal panic, were locked on the woman standing in the doorway beside Marcus. Miss Catherine Brennan, the woman who'd practically raised her after her own mother walked away. The woman who'd held her hand through boarding schools and debutante balls, who'd whispered that power without kindness was just cruelty, wearing expensive jewelry. The woman whose approval Victoria had spent years chasing like a starving child chasing crumbs, desperate, aching, willing to sell pieces of her soul for one proud smile. And the only person in this entire world that Victoria genuinely feared, because Catherine had always seen straight through her masks, seen the frightened, furious little girl screaming beneath the polish. "Miss Brennan," Victoria stammered, her voice suddenly small and childlike, cracking open to reveal the terrified teenager she'd never stopped being. I didn't know you were coming today." Catherine didn't smile, didn't blink. She just stood there in her elegant gray suit, silver hair pulled back perfectly, her sharp blue eyes moving from Victoria to Elena, then back to Victoria again, eyes that held centuries of sorrow and righteous fury. "Clearly," Catherine said quietly. But that single word felt like thunder rolling through the room, shaking foundations, cracking the pretty facade everyone had pretended was solid for far too long. The workers immediately bowed their heads, some taking small steps backward, trying to disappear into the walls, hearts pounding with a wild, guilty hope that maybe, someone powerful was finally going to protect them. Even Gregory the butler, who'd seen everything in his 20 years of service and carried every silent tear like stones in his pockets, looked genuinely nervous, his old hands trembling at his sides. Victoria finally managed to yank her hand free from Elena's grasp and stumbled backward, chest heaving, trying desperately to regain some composure, some dignity, anything to keep from drowning in the shame flooding her. This girl grabbed me first," Victoria said quickly, pointing an accusing finger at Elena, the finger shaking so badly it looked like it might snap. "She was disrespectful. I saw everything," Catherine interrupted, her voice still soft, but carrying enormous weight, the weight of every promise Victoria had ever broken. Victoria's mouth snapped shut, lips bloodless. "I've been standing in that hallway for the past 3 minutes," Catherine continued, each word measured, merciless. "And he was there too." She gestured toward Marcus with a slight nod of her head, and the gesture felt like a blade sliding between Victoria's ribs. Victoria's heart dropped like a stone thrown into deep water, cold, endless, pulling her down. Her eyes slowly, fearfully turned toward Marcus. And what she saw there made her blood run cold, made her feel suddenly horrifyingly small. Marcus stood completely still, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides so hard his knuckles had gone white. But it was his EYES that told the real story. They were cold, colder than Victoria had ever seen them. The warmth, the love, the gentle admiration he usually looked at her with, the look that had made her feel safe, chosen, worthy, had vanished completely, leaving behind only a stranger's icy judgment. He was looking at her like she was a stranger, someone ugly and foreign wearing the skin of the woman he thought he loved. "Marcus," Victoria whispered, her voice cracking wide open, raw with terror. "Please, let me explain." But Catherine spoke again, cutting through the tension like a knife through silk. "You promised me you had changed." "Victoria," Catherine said, and for the first time, there was real disappointment in her voice. Disappointment so heavy it seemed to age her 10 years in a single breath. "You swore to me, looked me in the eyes with those tears you're so good at summoning, and promised me you were working on your anger, on your treatment of others." Victoria swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry, tasting copper and regret. I am trying, Miss Brennan," she said desperately, voice splintering. "I really am. You know how hard I've been working on myself. This was just one moment of weakness." "I will." Catherine raised one hand, silencing her immediately. The gesture, gentle but absolute, like a mother finally giving up on a child who refused to be saved. "Trying?" Catherine repeated, her eyebrows lifting slightly, voice soft with heartbreaking pity. "By screaming at your staff? By hitting them? By humiliating people who depend on their jobs to survive? People who have children waiting at home? People who swallow your cruelty because they have no choice?" The workers, still standing frozen around the room, felt a mix of emotions crashing through them like waves. Some felt a strange, dizzy satisfaction that Victoria was finally being confronted. Others felt uncomfortable, like they were witnessing something too private, too painful, too much like watching a soul being flayed alive. Elena quietly stepped back, folding her hands in front of her, keeping her eyes down, her heart aching for every person in this room, even for Victoria, because she recognized the terrified child screaming behind the monster's mask. She hadn't wanted any of this attention. She'd only wanted to stop someone from being hurt, to keep one more person from carrying scars like the ones she still felt on her own heart. But Victoria wasn't finished fighting, clawing desperately for the power, slipping through her fingers like sand. She pointed at Elena again, her voice rising in desperation, shrill with the panic of someone watching their carefully built life crumble. "This girl disrespected me," Victoria insisted, tears of rage and fear spilling over. She grabbed my hand, she refused to let go. Why is everyone acting like she's the victim here? She's just a maid. The moment those words left Victoria's mouth, the entire atmosphere in the room shifted, like the temperature had plummeted 20 degrees, like every soul present felt the insult land on their own skin. It was like someone had opened a window and let freezing air rush in, air thick with the ghosts of every person who'd ever been called just anything. Slowly, very slowly, Marcus finally spoke. His voice was quiet, controlled, but absolutely lethal, each word forged in the fire of a love that had just died, a brutal, necessary death. "No one in this house," he said carefully, his eyes never leaving Victoria's, "is just anything." Victoria turned to look at him, her eyes wide, pleading, already mourning the man she was losing. Marcus took one step forward into the room, and that single step felt like the ground splitting open. "Everyone here," he continued, his voice growing stronger, raw with fury and grief, and a fierce, protective love for every trembling soul who'd suffered in silence under his roof, "has a name. Everyone here has a family. Everyone here has feelings, dreams, and dignity that you have trampled like they meant nothing. And every single person who works in this estate deserves respect, deserves safety, deserves to come to work without fear that some spoiled child will bruise their face because she had a bad day." Victoria blinked rapidly, stunned, tears streaming unchecked now, realizing for the first time that the man she loved was seeing her, really seeing her, and turning away in disgust. "Marcus, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," he said flatly, voice like a coffin lid closing. "You meant exactly what you said." The silence that followed was crushing, a silence that screamed with every broken heart in the room. Catherine folded her arms across her chest, watching the scene unfold with sad eyes that had seen this tragedy coming years ago. And then, just when everyone thought things couldn't possibly get more tense, when the air itself felt ready to shatter, the front door of the estate burst open. Boom. Everyone jumped, heart slamming against ribs. Heavy footsteps echoed through the entrance hall, fast and urgent, each one carrying the weight of years of grief and rage. And then a voice called out, loud and panicked, hoarse with desperation. Where is she? Where is Victoria? Victoria's face went from pale to ghostly white, every drop of blood draining away as if her soul had already fled. Because she recognized that voice immediately, a voice from nightmares she'd paid millions to bury. It was her father, Richard Hayes. Richard Hayes practically ran into the living room, his expensive suit wrinkled, his graying hair disheveled, sweat dripping down his temples even though it was only 60 degrees outside, his eyes wild with the terror of a man who knows the past has finally caught up and it's wearing steel-toed boots. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, the kind of person who usually commanded respect just by walking into a room. But right now he looked terrified, broken, like a father watching his little girl's grave open and spill its horrors into the light. The workers quickly bowed and moved aside, pity and fear mingling in their throats. Catherine stepped back slightly, her expression shifting to concern, hand pressing to her heart. Marcus stood his ground, his eyes narrowing, every instinct screaming that whatever came next would destroy what little was left of the life he thought he knew. But Victoria looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor, to melt through the marble and never come back. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The little girl who used to run to him with scraped knees and stolen cookies, now facing the monster she'd forced him to help her hide. Richard ignored her at first. His wild eyes found Marcus immediately, pleading, ashamed. "Mr. Wellington," he said, his voice shaking badly, cracking on every syllable. "Sir, I know you don't want drama today. I know this is the last thing you need, but please, we need to talk. Right now." Marcus frowned deeply, dread pooling cold and heavy in his gut. "Mr. Hayes," he said carefully, voice low, "what's going on?" Richard swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a man swallowing glass. He looked at his daughter, then back at Marcus, then at his daughter again, eyes brimming with tears he couldn't hold back anymore. "Victoria," he said, his voice cracking wide open, "why didn't you tell him?" Victoria's whole body started trembling, violent shudders that made her teeth chatter. "Daddy, no," she said quickly, taking a step toward him, hands reaching out like a child begging for one more story, one more lie. "Not here, not now, please don't do this." But Richard shook his head, tears actually forming in his eyes, spilling over the cheeks of a man who hadn't cried since his own father's funeral. "I can't protect you anymore," he said hoarsely, voice raw with grief and guilt that had been eating him alive for years. "I can't. This has gone too far." Marcus's jaw tightened. He walked closer to Richard, every step deliberate, dread, and fury warring in his chest. "Mr. Hayes," Marcus said firmly, voice edged with steel. "Tell me what? What are you talking about?" Richard took a shuddering breath that sounded like a sob. "It's about her past, sir," he finally said, voice barely holding together. "Something she should have told you a long time ago. Something I helped her bury because I was weak and terrified and loved her too much to lose her." Victoria let out a strangled sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob, her hands clawing at her throat. "Daddy, you promised," she cried, voice breaking into pieces. "You promised you would never tell anyone, you swore." Richard's face crumpled with guilt and pain, tears streaming freely now. "I only promised because I thought you had changed," he said, his voice breaking completely. "I thought you'd learned. I thought you'd become a better person. But seeing you here today, hearing what you just did to these people," he gestured vaguely at the staff around the room, his hand shaking. "I can't keep lying anymore. I can't carry your sin on my soul for one more day." Marcus's heart was pounding now, a war drum in his chest. He could feel something big was about to be revealed, something that would change everything, something that would shatter the fragile illusion he'd built his future on. "Mr. Hayes," Marcus said slowly, his voice dropping lower. "Dangerous. I'm listening." Richard wiped his forehead with a shaking hand, leaving streaks of sweat and shame. "My daughter," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, trembling with the weight of a decade of silence, "is not the woman you think she is." Victoria screamed, a raw, animal sound of pure terror. "Stop! she shrieked, lunging toward her father, nails scraping the air. "Daddy, please. If you tell him, everything will be ruined. My life will be over." But Richard gently pushed her hands away, his own hands shaking. As he touched the daughter, he'd failed as much as she'd failed everyone else. "Your life won't be over," he said sadly, voice thick with love and heartbreak. "But the lies need to end. They're killing us all." He turned back to Marcus, and the next words that came out of his mouth made the entire room go completely, utterly still, as if the world itself had stopped breathing. "Sir," Richard said quietly, voice cracking like thin ice, "years ago, before Victoria ever met you, she caused a terrible accident. She hurt someone, badly." The workers exchanged shocked glances, hands flying to mouths, hearts breaking for a girl they'd never met. Catherine's hand went to her throat, eyes closing in remembered pain. Elena, still standing quietly in the corner, felt her chest tighten, old ghosts whispering in her ears. Marcus's face went hard as stone, every muscle locking. "What kind of accident?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm, the calm before a storm that would level everything. Richard's eyes filled with tears that finally spilled over, carving tracks through the ruin of a father's face. "There was a young woman who worked for us," he said, his voice breaking into shards. "A housekeeper, just like these people here." He gestured toward the staff, his hand trembling violently. Her name was Sarah Mitchell. She was only 19 years old. Victoria collapsed onto the nearest chair, her face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably, body folding in on itself like paper burning. "One day," Richard continued, pushing through his tears, each word tasting like blood, "Victoria accused Sarah of stealing a piece of jewelry, a necklace. She was furious. She screamed at the poor girl. She slapped her multiple times, right in front of guests at a party we were hosting, slapped her until her lips split and her dignity bled out on the marble floor." Marcus's hands clenched into fists, knuckles cracking, rage and nausea twisting in his gut. "But that wasn't the worst part," Richard whispered, voice barely audible now. The room held its breath, every soul leaning forward into the horror. "Sarah tried to run away because she was so scared," Richard said, his voice cracking completely now, splintering into grief. "She ran out of our house in tears. She was so upset, so humiliated, so terrified, that she wasn't paying attention." A horrible feeling started spreading through the room, cold and final. "She ran into the street," Richard said, tears streaming down his face, voice raw with a decade of guilt. "And she got hit by a car." Someone in the room gasped loudly, a sound of pure anguish. Elena's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling over for a girl she'd never known but suddenly felt like a sister. Catherine closed her eyes, pain etched across her face like scars. Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach, air leaving his lungs in a silent scream. "No," he breathed, the word torn out of him. "Yes," Richard said, nodding slowly, brokenly. "Sarah Mitchell died at the hospital 3 hours later from her injuries." The words hung in the air like a death sentence, heavy, irreversible. Victoria was sobbing so hard she couldn't even speak anymore, just making these awful, broken sounds that weren't human, sounds of a soul finally realizing the monster it had become. Marcus turned slowly to look at her, every ounce of love he'd ever felt curdling into something dark and wounded. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice shaking for the first time, shaking with rage and betrayal, and a grief so deep it felt like drowning. Victoria looked up at him with red, swollen eyes, mascara running like black tears. I was only 17, she choked out between sobs, voice small and lost. I didn't mean for her to run into the street. I didn't mean for her to die. I was angry. I was so angry. But I didn't want her to die." Marcus felt like the floor was disappearing beneath his feet, like the woman he'd planned to build a life with had just vanished, leaving only a stranger wearing her face. "How could you hide this from me?" he whispered, voice cracking with the weight of a future that had just died. "Because I was scared," Victoria screamed, raw and ragged. "If I told you, you would have left me. You would have looked at me exactly how you're looking at me right now." She wasn't wrong about that. Marcus was looking at her differently, like he'd never truly known her at all, like every kiss, every promise, every dream they'd whispered in the dark had been built on the grave of a 19-year-old girl. Catherine finally spoke, her voice heavy with sorrow that had been building for years. "Victoria, I asked you specifically before I agreed to mentor you," she said quietly, voice trembling with betrayal. "I asked if there was anything in your past that I needed to know about, anything that might come back, and you lied to me. You looked into my eyes and lied while I still believed there was good in you worth saving." Victoria couldn't even respond anymore. She just wept, shoulders shaking with the force of a lifetime of running finally catching up. Richard wasn't finished though. "There's more," he said, and his voice took on a new tone. Fear. Real, genuine fear that made his whole body shake. Marcus's head snapped toward him, dread turning to ice in his veins. More? What more could there possibly be? Richard's hands were shaking now, clasped so tight his knuckles were white. "The family," he said hoarsely. "Sarah Mitchell's family. They never forgave us. They couldn't take us to court because we paid them off. A lot of money. Enough to make the police investigation go away. Enough to make sure Victoria's name never appeared in any official records. Enough blood money to buy silence, but never peace." Marcus felt sick to his stomach, bile rising in his throat. "But," Richard continued, his voice dropping to barely a whisper, trembling with terror, "Sarah's older brother, he never took the money. He refused it. He said no amount of money would ever bring his sister back, that some debts could only be paid in truth." A cold feeling started creeping up Marcus's spine, raising every hair on his body. "And 2 weeks ago," Richard said, his voice trembling so hard he could barely speak, "I got a phone call from an unknown number. The person on the other end said just 3 words. He paused, his face pale as death, eyes haunted. "What words?" Marcus asked. Though part of him didn't want to know, part of him already knew. Richard looked at his daughter with absolute heartbreak in his eyes, a father watching his child's grave open. They said, "I found her." Victoria let out a scream that echoed through the entire estate, a sound of pure animal terror that made every heart in the room clench. And at that exact moment, as if summoned by those words, as if the past had finally grown teeth and claws, a loud pounding started on the front door. Boom, boom, boom. Not a normal knock, an angry knock, the kind of knock that demands to be answered, that has waited 10 years for this moment. Everyone froze, breath caught in their throats. One of the security guards appeared in the doorway, his face pale, voice shaking. "Mr. Wellington," he said urgently, "there's a man at the gate. He's refusing to leave. He says he's here for Miss Hayes." Victoria started hyperventilating, gasping for air, clawing at her throat. "No, no, no," she kept repeating, voice rising into hysteria. "He found me. Oh God, he found me." Marcus looked from Victoria to her father, to the security guard, the world tilting on its axis. "Who?" Marcus demanded, voice like thunder now. "Who is at the gate?" The security guard swallowed hard, eyes wide with fear. "He says his name is Daniel Mitchell," the guard said quietly, the name falling into the room like a grenade. "And he says he's not leaving until he gets justice for his sister." The room exploded with gasps and shocked whispers, a collective inhale of horror and awe. Victoria collapsed completely, falling off the chair onto the floor, curling into herself like a child hiding from monsters that were finally real. Richard rushed to his daughter, but even he looked terrified, arms shaking as he reached for the child he'd failed to save from herself. And Marcus just stood there, his entire world crashing down around him in flames, realizing that the woman he'd been planning to marry had been hiding a secret so devastating that it had literally come back from the dead to haunt her, and that every promise he'd made, every dream he'd held, had been built on a foundation of blood and lies. The pounding on the door came again, louder this time, shaking the walls. Boom, boom, boom. And a voice shouted from outside, raw with 10 years of grief and fury. "Victoria Hayes, I know you're in there. You can't hide anymore." The pounding continued, each impact making the massive front door shake on its hinges like the furious heartbeat of a ghost who had waited 7 long years to be heard. Boom, boom, boom. Victoria was on the floor, curled into a trembling ball, hyperventilating so badly that her lips had turned blue, her entire body convulsing with the terror of a child finally facing the monster under her own bed. Catherine, the woman who had once wiped her tears and taught her how to curtsy, knelt beside her now, pressing 2 steady fingers to her pulse, whispering, "Breathe, darling, breathe," even as her own eyes glistened with sorrow for the girl she'd lost long ago. Richard Hayes stood frozen, his face a mask of terror and guilt, so deep it looked carved there. The father who had sold his soul in installments to protect a daughter who had never truly been his to save. The staff members pressed themselves against the walls, eyes wide, hearts hammering with a mixture of fear and wild, guilty exhilaration. Justice was coming, and it wore steel-toed boots. And Marcus stood perfectly still in the center of the room, his broad shoulders rigid, his mind racing through everything he'd just learned, trying to process the sickening truth that the woman he'd slipped a ring onto, the woman he'd kissed goodnight and dreamed a future with, had hidden something this enormous from him. Something that dripped with blood and screamed with a dead girl's name. Elena watched it all unfold from her quiet corner, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, tears burning behind her eyes for every soul in this room who had been broken by cruelty disguised as privilege. The security guard looked at Marcus desperately, voice cracking. "Sir," he said urgently, "what should we do? Should I call the police?" Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment, the weight of every life in this house pressing down on him, and felt something inside his chest finally snap, the last thread of illusion he'd been clinging to. Victoria grabbed his leg from where she lay on the floor, nails digging through his trousers like claws. "Please," she gasped, voice raw and ragged. "Please, Marcus, don't let him in. He'll hurt me. I know he will. He hates me. He's hated me for years. Please." Marcus looked down at her, at the woman he'd once thought was his future, and felt only a vast, aching cold. He gently, deliberately removed her hand. "He deserves to speak," Marcus said quietly, the words tasting like ash and freedom. Victoria let out a strangled SOB that tore from the depths of her soul. "No," she screamed, the sound ripping her throat. "Marcus, please, if you ever loved me, don't do this." But Marcus had already made his decision, a decision that felt like cutting out his own heart with a dull blade, but necessary, so necessary. He looked at the security guard and nodded once, the nod of a man stepping off a cliff. "Let him in." The entire room gasped, a collective inhale of pure dread and trembling hope. Victoria screamed again, a high, animal keen, trying to crawl backward across the marble floor on her elbows, as if she could claw her way back into the pretty lies she'd built her life on. Richard moved toward Marcus quickly, hands outstretched in frantic pleading. "Mr. Wellington," he begged, voice cracking like thin ice, "please reconsider. This man has been angry for 7 years. We don't know what he's capable of. He's capable of wanting justice for his sister." Marcus interrupted, his voice firm but not cruel firm with the righteous fury of a man who had just discovered how blind he'd been. "And frankly, Mr. Hayes, he deserves to have his say. More than any of us deserve to keep hiding from it." Catherine stood up slowly, brushing off her suit with trembling fingers, tears shining in her eyes. "Marcus is right," she said quietly, looking at Richard with centuries of sorrow. "This has been buried for too long. The truth always finds its way out. Eventually, sometimes it just has to kick the door down." The security guard nodded and left the room quickly, his footsteps echoing like gunshots. Everyone heard the front door open with a low, reluctant groan. Heavy footsteps echoed through the entrance hall, getting closer, each one deliberate, weighted with 7 years of grief sharpened into purpose. Victoria pressed herself against the wall, shaking violently, tears carving rivers through her perfect makeup, whispering no, 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 like a prayer to a God who had long stopped listening. And then he appeared in the doorway. Daniel Mitchell. He was tall, probably in his early 30s now, with broad shoulders and strong arms that came from years of physical labor. Arms that had once carried his little sister on his back when she was too tired to walk home from school. His face was weathered, lined with grief and anger that had never fully healed. Lines that mapped every sleepless night, every scream swallowed, every birthday candle blown out, alone. His dark hair was slightly unkempt, damp with sweat and travel. His clothes were simple, working class, dusty from the long drive that had finally brought him here. But it was his eyes that captured everyone's attention, eyes that had once sparkled when Sarah laughed, now burning with an intensity that came from 7 years of pain, 7 years of loss, 7 years of knowing his little sister was gone forever, and the person responsible had danced through life untouched. In his right hand, he clutched a photograph, edges worn soft from being held too many times, too tightly. Even from across the room, people could see it was a picture of a young woman with a bright, trusting smile, Sarah Mitchell, alive and glowing, before cruelty stole the light from her eyes. Daniel's eyes swept across the room until they landed on Victoria, pressed against the wall like a cornered animal, mascara streaking her cheeks like war paint from a battle she'd already lost. The moment their eyes met, Victoria let out a small, terrified whimper, the sound a child makes when the monster finally steps out of the closet. Daniel didn't rush forward. He didn't shout. He just stood there in the doorway, staring at her with the weight of 1,000 unspoken accusations. "So," he said finally, his voice low and rough, scraped raw from years of screaming into pillows. "There you are." Victoria's lips trembled. She tried to speak, but no words came out, only a broken exhale that tasted like regret. Marcus stepped forward slightly, positioning himself between them, not aggressively, but as a barrier, his protective instincts flaring even now, even after everything. "Mr. Mitchell," Marcus said carefully, voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I'm Marcus Wellington. This is my home." Daniel's eyes flicked to Marcus briefly, then back to Victoria, back to the woman who haunted his nightmares. "I know who you are," Daniel said, voice thick with exhaustion and old rage. "You're the billionaire, the famous tech genius, the man everyone says is such a good person." Marcus didn't respond to that. He just waited, giving this grieving brother the space his own heart had never been granted. Daniel took one step into the room, the photograph trembling slightly in his grip. "I wonder," Daniel continued, his voice getting slightly louder, cracking with emotion he'd carried alone for too long, "if you knew what kind of woman you were planning to marry. Or did she hide it from you too, just like she hid it from the world, from the police, from the girl bleeding out on the asphalt?" Marcus's jaw tightened, shame burning hot in his throat. "I'm learning about it now," he said honestly, the words tasting like failure. Daniel nodded slowly, almost sadly, a flicker of pity in his eyes for the man who had almost become another victim. "That sounds about right," he said. "Victoria was always good at hiding who she really was, wasn't she?" He turned his full attention back to Victoria, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Stand up," he said, voice quiet but unbreakable. Victoria shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her face, soaking the collar of her designer blouse. "Daniel, please," she started to say, voice small and shredded. "Stand up," he said again, louder this time, but not quite yelling, just the exhausted command of a man who had begged the universe for 7 years and received only silence. Catherine gently touched Victoria's shoulder, fingers trembling with sorrow and resolve. "Do as he says," she said quietly, voice cracking. "You owe him that much. You owe Sarah that much." Trembling, Victoria slowly pulled herself to her feet, using the wall for support, legs barely holding her weight, looking suddenly, heartbreakingly small. Daniel walked closer, stopping about 10 feet away from her, close enough for her to see the pain etched into every line of his face, far enough that she couldn't pretend he was the monster. For a long moment, he just looked at her, looked at the woman who had stolen his sister's future over a necklace that turned out to be lost, not stolen. Then he held up the photograph in his hand, fingers whitening around the edges. "Do you remember her?" he asked, his voice cracking like glass under too much pressure. Victoria's eyes filled with fresh tears that spilled over without permission. "Yes," she whispered, barely audible. "I remember." "Say her name," Daniel demanded, voice shaking with love and loss. Victoria swallowed hard, throat working painfully. "Sarah," she said softly, the name tasting like poison and prayer. "Sarah Mitchell." "That's right," Daniel said, nodding, tears glistening in his own eyes now. "Sarah Mitchell, my baby sister, the kindest person I ever knew. The girl who used to wake up at 5 in the morning to make breakfast for our sick mother, burnt toast and all, because she wanted Mom to feel loved. The girl who worked 3 jobs just to help pay for my college tuition because she believed in me more than I believed in myself. His voice was shaking now with barely controlled emotion, each word a fresh wound torn open. The girl who came to work for your spoiled, cruel family because she needed the money to keep our lights on, Daniel continued, voice rising with the injustice of it all. And you destroyed her. Over a necklace that you later found in your own jewelry box. 3 days too late, 3 days after my sister was already cold. Victoria gasped, a sound of pure horror at her own actions finally spoken aloud. Several workers gasped too, hands flying to mouths, hearts breaking for the girl they'd never met but suddenly mourned like family. Marcus's eyes widened, rage and nausea twisting in his gut like a blade. "What?" Marcus said sharply, voice cracking with betrayal. Daniel nodded, a bitter, broken smile crossing his face, the smile of a man who had carried this truth alone for years. "Oh, she didn't tell you that part?" he said, voice dripping with decades of contempt. 3 days after Sarah died, after I'd buried my 19-year-old sister in a dress she never got to wear to prom, Victoria found the necklace. It had fallen behind her dresser. Sarah never stole anything. She died for a lie. Victoria's knees buckled completely. She would have fallen if Catherine hadn't caught her, holding her up like a broken doll. "I didn't know," Victoria sobbed, voice shredded. "I swear I didn't know it had fallen. I really thought she took it." "But you didn't wait to find out, did you?" Daniel's voice rose now, genuine anger breaking through like thunder. "You didn't ask questions. You didn't check first. You just assumed a poor girl must be a thief because she cleaned your toilets. You screamed at her. You hit her again and again until her lips split and her soul shattered. You humiliated her in front of all those rich, laughing people at your party. Victoria was crying so hard she could barely breathe, chest heaving with the force of a lifetime of running finally catching her." And then Daniel continued, his voice breaking completely now, splintering into raw grief. "My sister ran. She ran out of your house in tears, not even looking where she was going, because all she wanted was to get away from you, and she ran straight into traffic." He stopped, taking a shuddering breath that sounded like a sob swallowed whole. "The doctor said she died almost instantly," he said quietly, voice hollow. "But I hope, God, I hope it was instant. I hope she didn't suffer. I hope her last thought wasn't that the world was cruel." The room was completely silent except for Victoria's sobs, sobs that sounded like they were tearing her apart from the inside. Elena, still standing in her corner, wiped tears from her own eyes with the sleeve of her uniform. She couldn't help it. This pain was too raw, too real. It tasted like every time she'd ever been made to feel small. Marcus felt his heart breaking not for Victoria, but for this man who'd lost everything to careless cruelty, and for the girl who would never again laugh or dream or grow old. Daniel stepped even closer to Victoria, close enough that she could see the tears he refused to let fall. "Do you know what these last 7 years have been like for me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper now, trembling with the weight of every sleepless night. "Do you know how many nights I've lain awake, imagining what Sarah's last moments were like, replaying the sound of tires screeching, wondering if she called for me?" Victoria shook her head, unable to speak, tears dripping off her chin. "Do you know," Daniel's voice cracked completely, "that my mother died 2 years ago, and her last words, her very last words, were asking me why I couldn't save Sarah?" Victoria let out a wail of anguish that seemed to come from the depths of hell itself. "I'm sorry," she sobbed, collapsing to her knees again. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I was young and stupid and horrible. I know I was. I've regretted it every single day since it happened. It haunts me. It haunts me. I'm sorry." Daniel stared at her for a long moment, chest heaving, the photograph trembling in his hand. Then, something changed in his expression. The hard anger softened just slightly into something else, something sadder, more exhausted, the look of a man who had carried hate so long it had become part of his bones. "I didn't come here to hurt you," he said quietly, voice raw. Victoria's head snapped up in surprise, eyes swollen and red. "What?" she whispered, hope and terror warring in her chest. Daniel shook his head slowly, tears finally spilling over. "I came here because I needed you to finally admit what you did," he said, voice breaking. I came here because I needed to look you in the eyes and know that you understood what you took from me. From us, from a mother who died of a broken heart, from a brother who will never be whole again. He paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath that sounded like surrender. And I came here, he continued, his voice steadier now, but still trembling, because holding on to this anger for 7 years has been killing me. It's destroyed my life just as much as your actions destroyed my sister's. I'm tired, Victoria. I'm so tired of hating you. Everyone in the room was crying now, silent tears sliding down hardened faces. Even some of the tough security guards had to look away, throats working painfully. But, Daniel said, his voice getting firmer, resolve hardening again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't face consequences. Victoria's eyes widened in fear again, fresh panic surging. The case was never officially closed, Daniel said, voice steady as steel now. Your father paid people off, made the police look the other way. But I've been working with lawyers, real lawyers, who care about truth more than money, and we can reopen it. Victoria started shaking her head desperately, hands clawing at the air. Daniel, please. You need to face what you've done, Daniel said firmly, unflinching. Not just apologize in private, not just feel bad when someone forces you to look, but actually face legal consequences for causing someone's death. Richard Hayes stepped forward suddenly, face ashen. Mr. Mitchell, he said, his voice shaking, I understand your anger. I truly do. But my daughter was a minor when this happened. She was 17. The law failed my sister. Daniel interrupted, voice rising again with righteous fury. And you know that, Mr. Hayes. You used your money and your power to make sure Victoria never had to answer for what she did. You buried my sister twice. Marcus looked at Richard with something close to disgust, the final thread of respect snapping. Is that true? Marcus asked quietly, voice like a blade. Richard couldn't meet his eyes. That was answer enough guilt, written in every trembling line of his body. Marcus turned back to Daniel, respect and sorrow mingling in his gaze. What do you want? Marcus asked simply, voice low and steady. Daniel looked at him with respect for the first time, two men who had both been betrayed by the same monster. I want her to come with me, Daniel said, voice calm but unyielding, to the police station, to make a formal statement, to finally let the truth be part of the official record. So Sarah's name is no longer a footnote in a cover-up. Victoria screamed and grabbed onto Marcus's arm with desperate strength. No, she shrieked, nails digging into his skin. Marcus, please, don't let him take me. I'll go to jail. My life will be over. But Marcus gently, so gently, it broke something inside her, removed her hands from his arm. Maybe, he said quietly, voice raw with grief and finality. That's what needs to happen. Victoria looked at him in total shock and betrayal, the man she thought would always save her, finally choosing truth over her tears. You're just going to let him? She whispered, voice small and lost. Marcus's face was pained but resolute, eyes shining with unshed tears. Victoria, he said softly, voice cracking, a young woman is dead because of your actions. You never faced consequences. You never made it right. You just buried it and moved on with your life, like it never happened, like Sarah was disposable. But I was 17, she sobbed, clutching at straws. And Sarah Mitchell was 19, Marcus said firmly, voice breaking with the weight of that truth. And she never got to turn 20. She never got to fall in love, or have a career, or hold her own baby. You took all of that from her. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow, truth finally landing harder than any slap she'd ever given. She slumped backward, all the fight draining out of her like blood from a mortal wound. Catherine moved forward and placed a trembling hand on Victoria's shoulder. I'll go with you, Catherine said quietly, voice thick with sorrow. I'll make sure you're treated fairly. But Marcus is right. You need to do this for Sarah, for Daniel, for the girl you could have been. Daniel nodded at Catherine gratefully, tears in his eyes for the first kindness he'd felt in years. Thank you, he said simply, voice rough. Just then, one of Marcus's phones, sitting on the side table, buzzed, loudly, sharp, and jarring in the sacred silence. Everyone jumped slightly at the sudden noise, hearts still raw. Marcus frowned and walked over to it, intending to silence it. needing one less thing, screaming at him. But as he picked it up, he noticed something strange. It wasn't HIS phone that had buzzed. There was another phone on the table, one he didn't recognize. A small black phone in a glittery case, Victoria's spare, the one she used for secrets. It must have fallen out of Victoria's pocket when she collapsed earlier, slipped free like every lie she'd ever told. The screen was lit up, showing a new text message from a contact saved as V. Marcus's frown deepened, dread pooling cold in his stomach. Something made him pick up the phone. Some final masochistic need to know exactly how deep the betrayal went. "Marcus, don't!" Victoria suddenly shouted, lunging toward him with desperate animal panic. But it was too late. Marcus had already seen the message on the lock screen. His entire body went rigid, every muscle locking as if he'd been struck by lightning. The message read, "Did he suspect anything yet? We need to move faster. Once you marry him, everything becomes yours." The room went completely silent, a silence more terrifying than any scream. Marcus's hands started shaking as he stared at the phone, the words searing into his retinas. "What?" he said slowly, his voice barely audible. "What is this?" Victoria's face went from red to pale in an instant, every drop of blood fleeing, as if her body already knew the game was over. "Marcus, I can explain," she started desperately, voice shrill with terror. But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. With trembling fingers, he swiped up on the phone. It wasn't password protected. Hubris, or carelessness, or maybe she never thought she'd get caught. He opened the messages, and what he saw made his blood run cold, texts upon texts of cold. Calculated strategy, his assets, his properties, his company shares, his wealth reduced to bullet points in a conquest. Messages discussing strategy like he was a company to be acquired, not a man to be loved. Messages that made it crystal clear Victoria had been planning something that made his skin crawl and his heart shatter all over again. Marcus scrolled up, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears, until he found a voice memo. The file name read, "Insurance Policy, Final Version." His finger hovered over it, trembling. "Marcus, please," Victoria screamed, tears streaming down her face as she crawled toward him on her knees. "Don't listen to that. Please, I'm begging you." But something in her panic, in her terror, told Marcus he needed to hear this, needed to rip the last bandage off the rotting wound. He pressed play, and Victoria's voice filled the entire living room, laughing, sounding relaxed and confident, the voice of a woman who thought she'd already won. "Once I marry Marcus, literally everything becomes mine. Half of everything immediately, and if he dies, I get it all. And if he ever tries to leave me, well, that's what this recording is for." Marcus felt like someone had driven a knife through his chest and twisted it slowly. The recording continued, Victoria's voice dripping with triumph. "I have footage of him visiting his mother's psychiatric facility before she died. He thinks nobody knows she struggled with mental illness, but I know, and if he tries to divorce me, I'll leak it. His precious reputation will be destroyed. He'll be the poor little billionaire with the crazy mother, and he'll never leave me then." Marcus's hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped the phone, tears burning hot in his eyes. The recording ended with Victoria's cold, satisfied laugh. The room was in complete shock, a collective gasp of horror that sucked all the air out. Daniel stood frozen, his mouth hanging open, the photograph forgotten in his hand. Catherine had gone pale, one hand over her heart as if to keep it from shattering. Richard Hayes looked like he might actually collapse, face crumpling, as he realized he'd raised and enabled a sociopath. The staff members were whispering to each other in horror, hands over mouths, tears streaming. Elena couldn't believe what she'd just heard, couldn't reconcile the monster on that recording with the woman who'd once smiled so sweetly for cameras. And Marcus just stood there, staring at the phone in his hand, feeling like his entire world had just shattered into a million jagged pieces, every kiss, every promise, every "I love you" revealed as poison. "Marcus," Victoria whispered, crawling toward him on her hands and knees like a supplicant. Please listen to me. I was scared. I was scared of losing you. I didn't mean those things. I love you. I love you." But Marcus slowly looked up from the phone, and the look in his eyes was something Victoria had never seen before, something that, finally, truly terrified her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even hurt. It was absolute, complete emptiness, the look of a man who had just realized every future he dreamed was built on a foundation of calculated deceit. "You," he said quietly, his voice shaking with betrayal so deep it felt like dying, "were going to blackmail me with my mother's illness." Victoria shook her head frantically, mascara-streaked tears flying. No, I would never have actually used it," she sobbed. "It was just in case, just protection. Please, you have to believe me." "My mother," Marcus continued, his voice breaking into pieces, "who suffered for years with depression and anxiety after my father died, who was ashamed of needing help, who begged me on her deathbed to never let anyone know because she didn't want people to think less of her, less of us." Tears started falling down Marcus's face. Hot, angry, heartbroken tears for the gentle woman who had loved him with her whole fragile heart. "And you," he whispered, voice raw, "were gonna use that to control me, to trap me like I was property." Victoria reached for his hand, but he stepped back as if her touch would burn. "Don't touch me," he said, his voice suddenly cold as ice, colder than she'd ever managed to be. Victoria fell forward, sobbing so hard her entire body shook, curls sticking to her wet face. Catherine looked at Victoria with something close to disgust, the final shattering disappointment of a mentor who had failed. "Victoria," Catherine said quietly, voice trembling, I really tried to believe you had changed. But this," she shook her head sadly, tears falling, "this is beyond anything I imagined. This is evil wearing a victim's mask." Daniel Mitchell, who'd come here for justice for his sister, now stood witness to an even bigger betrayal unfolding. A betrayal that made Victoria's cruelty to Sarah look almost amateur. "She really is a monster," Daniel said quietly, almost to himself, voice thick with exhausted recognition. Richard Hayes couldn't even defend his daughter anymore. He just stood there, broken and ashamed, a father watching the child he'd spoiled rot in real time. Marcus looked at the security guards, looked at them with eyes that had aged a decade in an hour. "Call the police," he said, his voice emotionless, now hollowed out, cauterized. Victoria's head snapped up, eyes wild with animal panic. "What?" she shrieked, voice shredding. "Call them," Marcus repeated, turning away from her as if she were already a ghost. "For everything. The accident 7 years ago, the assault on my staff today, and..." He looked down at the phone, still clenched in his hand. "Attempted extortion, and whatever else they can charge her with for trying to destroy a man's life for money." Victoria let out a scream that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, a sound of pure, unfiltered despair. "You're gonna destroy me," she sobbed, clawing at the marble. "Marcus, please, I'll get help. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. Just please don't do this." But Marcus had already turned away from her, completely turned toward the light, toward truth, toward whatever came after betrayal. He walked over to Daniel and held out his hand, steady now, resolute. "I'm truly sorry," Marcus said quietly, voice thick with regret, "for what happened to your sister. And I'm sorry my fiancé's family was able to bury the truth for so long. I'm sorry I was blind enough to almost marry into that darkness." Daniel shook his hand, respect and shared pain passing between them like current. "Thank you," Daniel said simply, voice rough with gratitude and exhaustion. Marcus then turned to Elena, the quiet maid, who had started all of this by simply refusing to let cruelty win, and his eyes softened for the first time in hours. "And thank you," Marcus said to her, voice trembling with sincerity, "for having the courage to do what no one else would do, for being the spark that finally burned the lies down." Elena nodded, unable to speak through her tears, tears of relief, of vindication, of sorrow for every bruised soul finally seen. Within 20 minutes, the police arrived, sirens growing louder, like the sound of justice finally waking up. They took statements from everyone, quiet, shaken voices, telling truths that had been buried too long. They collected the phone with the recording. They spoke with Daniel about reopening the case from 7 years ago, Sarah's name finally to be spoken aloud in a court of law. And they placed Victoria Hayes under arrest cold metal cuffs, snapping around wrists that had once worn diamonds. As she was led out of the Wellington Estate in handcuffs, heels dragging, mascara running, designer dress torn at the knee, she looked back at Marcus one final time, eyes swollen and desperate. "I really did love you," she said, her voice broken into 1,000 pieces. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, looked at the stranger he'd almost married, and felt only pity and disgust. "No," he said quietly, voice steady as stone. "You loved what I could give you. That's not the same thing, and it never was." And then she was gone, led away into the blinding afternoon light, the heavy door closing behind her with a final echoing thud. The room fell into a heavy, exhausted silence, the kind of silence that comes after a storm has torn the house apart but left you, somehow, still breathing. But as everyone started to process what had just happened, as people began to move and breathe again, hugging each other with shaking arms, whispering "it's over" like a prayer, something else was discovered. One of the security guards, doing a sweep of the house to make sure everything was secure, called out from the hallway, voice strangely hushed, almost reverent. "Mr. Wellington, sir? I think you need to see this." Marcus, exhausted and emotionally drained, feeling 100 years old, walked over to him on legs that barely worked. The guard was holding a small leather notebook that had apparently fallen behind a couch cushion in the main sitting room, hidden there like every other secret. "I found this, sir," the guard said quietly, eyes wide. "And I think you should look at it." Marcus took the notebook, frowning, hands still trembling from everything he'd endured. He opened it, and his eyes went wide with shock breath catching in his throat like he'd been punched all over again. Because what he found inside that notebook would change everything they thought they knew about Victoria Hayes. And it would reveal one final secret that no one, not even Richard Hayes, not even Catherine, had known about, a secret so dark, so devastating, it made everything that came before look like mercy. Marcus stood frozen in the hallway, the small leather notebook trembling in his hands like a living thing trying to escape. His face had gone completely pale bloodless, as if every drop had drained into the pages he was reading. The security guard who'd found it shifted uncomfortably, throat working. "Sir?" he said quietly, voice thick with worry. "Are you all right?" But Marcus couldn't speak. He just kept staring at the pages, his eyes moving rapidly back and forth, pupils blown wide, reading something that clearly shocked him to his core, something that clawed open the last fragile scar tissue over his heart and poured acid straight in. Daniel Mitchell, still standing in the living room, raw grief etched into every line of his face, noticed Marcus's reaction and felt his stomach drop. "What is it?" Daniel asked, walking over on legs that felt suddenly unsteady. "What did you find?" Marcus looked up slowly, so slowly, his expression a mixture of disbelief and something else, something almost like pity, heartbreaking, bone-deep pity for the terrified, broken girl Victoria must have once been beneath all the cruelty. "It's a diary," Marcus said quietly, voice cracking like thin ice. "Victoria's diary." Catherine moved closer, her elegant heels clicking softly against the marble, each step sounding like a heartbeat in the suffocating silence. "Marcus," she said carefully, voice trembling with dread, "perhaps that's private. Maybe we shouldn't." "No," Marcus interrupted, shaking his head, eyes shining with unshed tears and a fierce, righteous resolve. "No, everyone needs to hear this. The truth doesn't get to hide anymore, not after everything." He walked back into the living room, the notebook clutched tightly in his hand like a grenade with the pin already pulled. The staff members who'd been quietly whispering among themselves, voices hushed with shock and fragile hope, fell silent, the kind of silence that comes before a storm finally breaks. Elena stepped forward slightly from her corner, her curiosity overcoming her usual desire to stay invisible, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and desperate need to understand the monster who had ruled their lives. Richard Hayes, who'd been sitting in a chair with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent, shattered sobs, looked up slowly, eyes red and pleading. Marcus opened the notebook to a page he'd marked with his finger. The paper creased from the force of his grip. "This entry," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly, raw with the weight of what he was about to unleash, "is dated 3 months ago. Right around when Victoria and I got engaged." He began to read aloud each word, falling like a stone into still water, rippling outward, destroying everything in its path. "I saw her again today. The woman from the car, the one who was with Sarah that day. She came to my apartment. She knows. She's known for years. And now she wants money. So much money. Or else she'll tell everyone what really happened. She says she has proof. She says she'll destroy me." The room went dead silent, a silence, so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Daniel's eyes widened, grief and fury colliding fresh in his chest. "Wait," Daniel said slowly, voice hollow with dawning horror. "What woman?" Marcus kept reading, his voice getting quieter, as if the words themselves were too heavy to speak at full volume. "I never told anyone the complete truth. Not Daddy, not the police, not anyone, because I'm too ashamed, too scared. The truth is, I didn't just slap Sarah that day. I didn't just yell at her. I chased her. When she ran out of the house, I ran after her, screaming. I wanted to hurt her more. I was so angry, so out of control. And when she ran into the street, there was a car coming. I saw it. But I didn't warn her. I just stood there. I watched. And then Marcus's voice broke completely, a raw, wounded sound that tore from his throat. He had to pause to collect himself, tears spilling over despite his fight to hold them back. Catherine's hand went to her mouth, eyes wide with horror and heartbreaking recognition. Elena felt tears streaming down her face again. Hot, helpless tears for a girl who had died, terrified and alone. Richard Hayes let out a sound like a wounded animal, a guttural, broken keen that echoed every failure of a father who had looked away too many times. Marcus continued, his voice barely above a whisper, now each word tasting like blood. And then the car hit her. But it wasn't just any car, it was her car. My friend Veronica, she was driving. She hit Sarah, and we panicked. Veronica backed up and drove away. She didn't stop. She didn't call for help. She just left Sarah lying there in the street, bleeding, broken, calling for her brother in her last moments. And I ran back inside and pretended I'd never followed Sarah out. I let everyone think she'd run out alone, that it was just a tragic accident. But it wasn't. Veronica hit her and drove away, and I let her do it. I'm just as guilty, maybe more guilty because I could have stopped it. The notebook fell from Marcus's trembling hands and hit the floor with a loud thud that sounded like a coffin lid slamming shut. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed the air itself, thick with the ghosts of every lie finally screaming into the light. Daniel Mitchell stood, completely frozen, his face a mask of horror and grief and rage, all mixed together, rage that had just found a new target, grief that had just been carved open all over again. There was a driver, he said, his voice hollow, breaking. All these years, I thought it was just a hit and run by some random person, but it was someone she knew, someone who was there because of what Victoria did, someone who left my sister to die alone in the street. Richard Hayes was crying now, full-on sobbing shoulders, heaving hands, clawing at his own face as if he could rip away the father he'd been. I didn't know, he gasped, voice shredded. I swear to God, I didn't know about the driver being her friend. Victoria only told me Sarah ran out and got hit. She never said she chased her. She never said she watched it happen. She never said she let her die. Catherine sank down into a chair, looking older than she had just moments before, decades of misplaced faith, aging her in a single heartbeat. This is worse than we thought, she whispered, voice trembling with sorrow and disgust. This is so much worse. This is murder dressed up as accident. Marcus bent down slowly, like an old man carrying the weight of the world, and picked up the notebook again. His hands were shaking as he flipped to another entry. This one more recent, the paper crisp with fresh ink and fresh desperation. There's more, he said quietly, voice raw. From 2 weeks ago. He read each word, a fresh wound. Veronica's getting more demanding. She wants $1 million now. She says, once I marry Marcus, I'll have access to enough money that $1 million won't even matter. But she doesn't understand. Marcus isn't stupid. He'll notice if that much money disappears. So I had to come up with a backup plan. If I can get proof of something embarrassing about Marcus, something he'd want to keep hidden, then I can use that to keep him from asking too many questions about money. That's when I found out about his mother's mental health records. I hired someone to dig into his past. I know it's terrible. I know I'm becoming the kind of person I hate. But I'm trapped. If Veronica exposes me, my life is over. If Marcus finds out what I'm doing, my life is over. So I have to protect myself, no matter what it takes. Marcus closed the notebook, slowly, deliberately, as if closing the lid on Victoria's soul. The silence that followed was crushing. A silence that screamed with every life destroyed by one girl's unchecked cruelty and fear. Elena finally spoke, her voice small but clear, steady despite the tears still falling. "So she wasn't just cruel," Elena said softly, voice trembling with sorrow and rage. "She was being blackmailed by someone who helped her cover up what really happened, someone who shared her guilt and fed on it like a parasite." "That doesn't excuse what she did," Daniel said sharply, his voice rising raw with fresh agony. "Being blackmailed doesn't excuse her chasing my sister into traffic. It doesn't excuse her watching Sarah get hit and doing nothing. It doesn't bring my sister back from the grave." "You're right," Marcus said immediately, voice firm despite the tears on his own cheeks. "You're absolutely right. Nothing excuses that nothing ever could." He looked at Daniel directly, two men bound now by shared betrayal and shared grief. "But it does mean there's someone else who needs to be held accountable." Marcus continued, voice steadying with resolve. "This Veronica, the actual driver, the one who hit Sarah and drove away, who left a 19-year-old girl to die alone in the street." Daniel's jaw clenched, fresh purpose burning through the grief. "Do you know who she is?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. "This Veronica?" Marcus flipped through the notebook again, scanning pages quickly, pages filled with frantic, terrified scrawl. "She mentions her last name in one entry," Marcus muttered, voice thick. "Here, Veronica Chen, my best friend since high school, the person I trusted most in the world, and now the person who's destroying my life." Daniel immediately pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen with the urgency of a man who had waited 7 years for this moment. "I'm calling my lawyer," he said firmly, voice shaking with barely contained fury and hope. "If this woman was involved, if she was the driver, then she needs to be arrested too. She needs to finally pay for what she stole from my family." "Agreed," Marcus said, voice like steel now. Catherine stood up slowly, smoothing down her suit with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. "This has become much larger than any of us anticipated," she said quietly, voice heavy with sorrow. "Marcus, you should contact your attorney as well. This notebook is evidence in what's now a vehicular manslaughter case, and God help us all for how deep this grave goes." Richard Hayes looked up, his face stained with tears, a father watching his daughter's sins finally swallow her whole. "Mr. Wellington," he said hoarsely, voice breaking, "I know you have no reason to help my daughter after everything she's done, but she's still my child. And if what this diary says is true, she's been suffering under this blackmail for months, maybe longer, carrying this guilt alone, rotting from the inside." Marcus looked at him for a long moment, looked at the broken man who had enabled a monster out of blind love. "Mr. Hayes," Marcus said carefully, voice steady but laced with sorrow, "I feel for you, I really do. But your daughter made choice after choice that led her here. She chose to chase Sarah. She chose not to warn her. She chose to cover it up. She chose to let her friend drive away. And then, when she had the chance to come clean about all of it, to maybe find some redemption, some humanity, she chose instead to try to manipulate and blackmail Emmy to drag me into the same darkness." Richard's head dropped, fresh sobs shaking his frame. "I know," he whispered, voice shredded. "I know I taught her none of this, and everything of it." Marcus's voice softened slightly, just slightly, the last ember of compassion he could spare. "That being said," he continued, "the fact that she was being blackmailed will matter in court. It won't excuse her actions, but it provides context, shows the terrified child she never stopped being. Make sure her lawyer knows about this notebook. It might help her. Case might be the only mercy left." Richard looked up with surprised, grateful eyes that had forgotten what kindness felt like. "Thank you," he said quietly, voice thick with tears. Marcus just nodded, a nod that cost him, but one he gave anyway. Over the next hour, the house became a flurry of activity. Police returning, lawyers arriving, statements taken in hushed, shaken voices. Police detectives returned, this time with notepads and recording devices, taking detailed statements from everyone, voices cracking as they finally spoke truths that had been buried for years. Daniel's lawyer arrived and immediately began working with the police to issue a warrant for Veronica Chen's arrest. Justice finally growing teeth. Catherine made several phone calls to various legal contacts, ensuring that everything was being handled properly, her voice steady, despite the tears still drying on her cheeks. And Marcus sat alone in his study, holding his mother's photograph, her gentle smile, now forever safe from Victoria's cruelty, thinking about how Victoria had been willing to use his mother's memory, her pain, as a weapon against him, and feeling the last piece of his heart that had still ached for her finally turn to ash. There was a soft knock on his door. "Come in," he said quietly, voice raw from everything he'd lost and everything he'd found. The door opened, and Elena stepped inside hesitantly, still in her simple uniform, but standing taller now, as if the weight of the truth had made her unbreakable. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Wellington," she said softly, voice gentle with concern. "I just wanted to make sure you were all right." Marcus looked at her, this young woman he barely knew, who had somehow catalyzed the revelation of so much truth simply by refusing to allow cruelty to continue unchallenged, and felt something inside him soften, something that had been hard and guarded for far too long. "I'm not sure I am all right," Marcus admitted, voice cracking with honesty, "but I will be, eventually because of people like you." Elena nodded, understanding completely two souls who had both known what it was to be unseen, now finally seen. "May I ask you something, sir?" she said, voice steady despite her own tears. "Of course." "Why did you let Mr. Mitchell in?" Elena asked, voice soft with wonder. "You could have had security remove him. You could have protected Miss Hayes. But you chose to let him speak. Why?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering the question, considering the man he was becoming, the man his mother had always believed he could be. "Because," he said finally, voice low and certain, "the truth is more important than comfort." Daniel Mitchell deserved to have his voice heard after 7 years of screaming into silence. His sister deserved to be remembered as more than just a footnote, and Victoria's story deserved to be more than the price of one girl's pride. And Victoria needed to finally face what she'd done, needed the mirror held up to her soul no matter how much it shattered. He paused, then added softly, voice thick with self-revelation. "And honestly, I think a part of me already knew. Deep down, I think I knew that Victoria wasn't who she pretended to be. Felt the cold places in her touch, saw the flicker of something cruel behind her smile. I just didn't want to see it, didn't want to lose the illusion of love." Elena stepped closer, eyes shining with quiet strength. "You're a good man, Mr. Wellington," she said simply, voice steady and sure. Marcus gave her a sad smile, the first real smile in hours. "I'm trying to be," he said, voice trembling. "But I almost married someone who would have destroyed me, would have used my mother's pain as chains. If you hadn't stopped her today, if you hadn't caught her hand when she tried to hit that other maid, if you hadn't stood up when every instinct told you to stay silent, none of this would have come out." Elena shook her head gently, eyes soft with compassion. "I think it would have come out eventually," she said wisely, voice like a balm on raw wounds. "The truth always does. It just needed someone brave enough to give it a voice. I just couldn't stand by and watch someone get hurt. Not when I could do something about it. Not after everything I've survived, mice." Marcus stood up and walked over to her, walked over to the quiet hero who had saved them all, without ever raising her voice. "Elena Rodriguez," he said formally, voice thick with gratitude, "I owe you a debt of gratitude. You showed more courage in 3 days working here than most people show in a lifetime. You reminded us all what humanity looks like when it refuses to look away." Elena blushed and looked down, overwhelmed. "I was just doing what felt right, sir." "That," Marcus said, voice fierce with conviction, "is exactly what makes it courageous. That's exactly what makes it rare." 3 weeks passed, 3 weeks that felt like a lifetime, like waking up from a long, dark dream. In that time, so much changed, the estate breathing freer, the city whispering with the scandal, justice finally stretching its cramped wings. Victoria Hayes was formally charged with multiple crimes, being an accessory to vehicular manslaughter, obstruction of justice, and attempted extortion. Her trial was set for 6 months away, 6 months in a cell with nothing but the echo of Sarah's name. Veronica Chen was arrested trying to board a flight to Singapore, dragged off the plane in handcuffs, screaming that she was being framed, while the truth finally caught her. She was brought back and charged with vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of an accident, and blackmail. Her lawyer immediately tried to make a deal, offering to testify against Victoria in exchange for a reduced sentence. Rats abandoning the same sinking ship. Richard Hayes sold his downtown properties to pay for his daughter's legal defense, sold pieces of his empire to buy his daughter one last chance at mercy. He also established a scholarship fund in Sarah Mitchell's name, dedicated to helping young women from low-income families pursue education and career opportunities, trying, in the only way he knew how, to give back what his daughter had stolen. Catherine Brennan publicly denounced Victoria and resigned from all the charity boards they had served on together. In a statement, she said, voice trembling but resolute, "I failed to see who Victoria truly was, and for that, I am deeply sorry. I will spend the rest of my life working to help young people develop genuine character, not just the appearance of it, to teach them that kindness is the only legacy that matters." And Daniel Mitchell? Daniel finally got what he'd been seeking for 7 years. Justice for his sister. Cold, hard, legal justice. But more than that, he got peace. The kind that comes when the screaming in your soul finally quiets. The anger that had consumed him for so long began to lift like fog, burning off under a rising sun. He started attending therapy. He reconnected with old friends. He even started dating someone, a kind woman who worked at the library and who Sarah would have loved, who laughed the way Sarah used to. At Sarah's grave, Daniel placed fresh flowers every week, daisies, because they were her favorite. And he talked to her, voice soft in the quiet cemetery, telling her that the truth had finally come out, that the people responsible were facing consequences, and that he was finally learning to live again, instead of just existing in his anger, that he was trying to become the man she always believed he could be. But the biggest changes happened at the Wellington Estate changes, that turned a house of fear into a home of healing. Marcus completely restructured how the household operated. He sat down with every staff member individually, looked them in the eyes, really saw them for the first time, asked about their experiences working there, listened to stories that broke his heart, and made it clear that any form of abuse or mistreatment would result in immediate termination of the abuser, regardless of their position. No more queens, no more victims. He raised everyone's salaries by 20% because dignity shouldn't come with a paycheck, but respect should. He established a formal HR system where workers could report concerns anonymously, so no one ever had to swallow fear again. He created a staff appreciation program with regular bonuses and recognition because the people who kept his world running deserved to know they mattered. And most importantly, he made sure everyone understood that they were valued, respected members of the household, not just invisible servants, human beings with names, with families, with dreams worth protecting. The atmosphere in the estate changed completely, like sunlight pouring into a tomb. People smiled, more real smiles, not the tight, terrified kind. Laughed more laughter that echoed through halls that had once known only silence and dread. The tension that had hung in the air like a dark cloud for so long finally lifted, replaced by something that felt almost like family. And Elena? Marcus called her into his study one afternoon, exactly 1 month after the incident, 1 month after the day the world cracked open and let the light in. "Elena," he said with a warm smile, the first genuine one in weeks, "please sit down." She sat nervously, hands folded in her lap, wondering if perhaps she was in trouble, old fears dying hard. "I've been thinking," Marcus began, voice gentle, "about what happened that day. About your courage, about your character, about the way you stood up when everyone else had learned to kneel. And I've made a decision." Elena's heart raced, hope and fear warring in her chest. "I'm currently looking for someone to help manage my charitable foundation," Marcus continued, eyes shining with sincerity. "Someone with integrity. Someone who stands up for what's right even when it's difficult, even when it costs everything. Someone who sees people, really sees them rather than just looking past them." Elena's eyes widened, breath catching. Are you offering me a job, sir?" she asked softly, voice trembling with disbelief. Marcus smiled, a real smile, full of light. "I'm offering you a career, Elena. I want you to help me decide where our foundation's money goes, who we help, what causes we support. I want someone who actually cares about people, someone whose heart has never been small, not just someone who looks good on paper." Tears filled Elena's eyes, tears of joy, of vindication, of a future she'd never dared dream. Mr. Wellington, I don't have experience with that kind of work, she said honestly, voice cracking. You're just someone who had the courage to do the right thing when everyone else was too afraid. Marcus interrupted gently, voice fierce with belief. That's the only qualification that matters to me. That's the only one that ever mattered. Elena wiped her eyes, a smile breaking across her face like sunrise. Then yes, she said, her voice strong and clear for the first time in her life. Yes, I accept. Marcus stood and extended his hand, steady, sure, full of promise. As they shook hands, Marcus said quietly, voice thick with emotion. My mother used to tell me something when I was young. She said, Marcus, a person's true character shows not in how they treat people who can help them, but in how they treat people who can't do anything for them at all. He smiled sadly, eyes distant with memory. Victoria treated people who couldn't fight back like they were nothing. He continued, voice trembling. But you stood up for someone who couldn't defend themselves, even though it could have cost you your job, your safety, your future. That's the kind of person I want in my life. That's the kind of person I want to work with, the kind of person the world needs more of. Elena nodded, understanding completely two souls who had both learned the cost of silence. Your mother sounds like she was a very wise woman, Elena said softly, voice full of reverence. She was, Marcus agreed, his voice thick with emotion, tears shining in his eyes for the mother who had taught him to see. She struggled with her own darkness, but she taught me to always reach for the light, and because of you, I finally have. 6 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, Marcus stood in a community center in the part of Atlanta where Sarah Mitchell had grown up, a place that had once known only struggle, now blooming with hope. The center was brand new, funded entirely by the Wellington Foundation, every brick a promise kept, every window a light turned on in the dark. Elena stood beside him, now dressed professionally strong, confident, glowing with purpose, carrying a folder of documents about all the programs the center would offer: job training, education classes, counseling services, childcare support, everything Sarah never got the chance to need, now given freely to others. Daniel Mitchell was there too, along with about 100 community members, faces alight with cautious, trembling joy. Together, they unveiled the sign above the entrance, hands shaking as they pulled the cloth away. The Sarah Mitchell Community Center, in memory of a life taken too soon, in honor of those who stand for justice. Daniel stood in front of the crowd, tears streaming down his face, tears of grief finally mixed with healing, and spoke, voice carrying across the crowd like a benediction. My sister Sarah believed that everyone deserved kindness, he said, voice cracking with love. She believed that people were fundamentally good, and even though she experienced cruelty that cost her everything, I don't want her memory to be about hatred. I want it to be about hope, about second chances, about light after darkness. He gestured to the building behind him, pride and sorrow mingling in his eyes. This center will help people who are struggling just like Sarah was struggling, Daniel continued, voice steadying with purpose. It will support people who need a second chance, or even just a first chance. And it will remind everyone who walks through these doors that even in the darkest moments, there are people willing to stand up and do the right thing. People like Elena, people like Marcus, people like all of you. He turned to Marcus and Elena, eyes shining with gratitude that went soul deep. Mr. Wellington could have hidden from all of this, Daniel said, voice thick. He could have tried to bury the truth to protect his reputation, but he didn't. He chose justice over comfort, chose my sister's memory over his own peace. And Miss Rodriguez, she risked everything to stop cruelty, even though nobody would have blamed her for staying silent. She became the voice Sarah never got to have. The crowd applauded tears, and cheers mingling in the bright spring air. Marcus stepped forward to speak, voice steady, full of hard-won peace. I learned something important through all of this, he said quietly, words carrying to every heart. I learned that the people we think we know, we sometimes don't know at all, that love can be a mask for monsters. But more importantly, I learned that sometimes the people we barely notice, the people we take for granted, are the ones with the most to teach us about courage and character, the ones who save us when we don't even know we need saving. He looked at Elena, who smiled, a smile bright enough to light the world. This center exists because a young woman refused to let cruelty continue unchallenged, Marcus said, voice trembling with gratitude. It exists because a brother refused to let his sister's death be forgotten, refused to let hate win. And it exists because all of us, when we choose truth over convenience, when we choose justice over comfort, we make the world a little bit better, one brave act at a time. The crowd erupted in applause, hope rising like a tide. After the ceremony, as people toured the new facility, laughing, crying, hugging strangers who felt like family, Elena found herself standing alone in front of Sarah's memorial photo in the main lobby. Sarah smiled out from the frame, young and hopeful, full of dreams that would never be realized, but now immortalized in light and love. "I hope we made you proud," Elena whispered to the photo, voice thick with tears. A voice behind her said softly, full of gentle certainty, "She would have loved you." Elena turned to find Daniel standing there, eyes soft with healing. "You remind me of her," Daniel said, voice tender. "That quiet strength, that unwillingness to accept injustice. Sarah had that too. She would have stood right beside you that day." Elena smiled sadly, tears falling freely now. "I wish I could have known her." "In a way," Daniel said, voice steady with peace, "you do know her because you carry the same spirit she had. And as long as people like you exist, as long as people are willing to stand up when it matters, Sarah's light never really goes out. It just finds new hands to carry it." They stood together in comfortable silence, honoring a life lost but never forgotten, two souls connected forever by one act of courage. That evening, Marcus sat on the balcony of his estate, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple colors his mother had loved. For the first time in months, he felt peace, real bone-deep peace that tasted like forgiveness and forward motion. Yes, he'd lost someone he thought he loved, but he'd also discovered that who he thought he loved never really existed in the first place, only a beautiful mask over a terrified, cruel heart. Yes, he'd learned painful truths about cruelty and manipulation and human darkness, but he'd also learned about courage and integrity and the power of choosing what's right, learned that light always finds a way in, even through the deepest cracks. His phone buzzed with a message. It was from his therapist, the one he'd started seeing after everything fell apart, the one who had helped him grieve, the lie he'd almost lived. "Remember, sometimes we have to lose what we thought we wanted in order to find what we actually need. You're on the right path, Marcus. Keep going." He smiled, a real smile, soft and wondering, and looked out at the estate grounds, where he could see some of the staff members finishing their workday, laughing and talking with each other, relaxed and happy, no longer afraid of their own shadows. So different from the tense, fearful atmosphere of just months ago, like night turning to day. His mind drifted to Victoria, currently awaiting trial, facing the consequences of years of cruelty and deception. And surprisingly, he didn't feel hate. He just felt sad. Sad for who she could have been. Sad for the choices she made. Sad for everyone hurt along the way, Sarah most of all. But he also felt grateful. Grateful beyond words. Grateful that the truth came out before he married her. Grateful that Elena had the courage to stop what could have been just another instance of abuse. Grateful that Daniel had the strength to seek justice. Grateful that somehow, out of all this darkness, some light had emerged bright enough to guide others home. Marcus closed his eyes and whispered into the evening air, voice soft with love and release. "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me to recognize real character. I'm trying to live up to what you taught me. I finally am." The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of jasmine and new beginnings. And for just a moment, Marcus could almost feel his mother's presence, proud of the man he'd become, proud of the choices he'd made, proud of the light he'd chosen to carry. 6 months later, epilogue. The courtroom was packed air, thick with anticipation and the weight of 12 years of buried truth. Victoria Hayes sat at the defendant's table, looking smaller somehow than she had before, diminished, stripped of every illusion. Prison time awaiting trial had changed her. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced with a simple gray suit that hung loosely on her frame. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was pulled back in a plain ponytail. No more armor. Her face, once so confident and proud, now looked haunted and exhausted eyes that had finally seen themselves clearly. The jury had deliberated for 3 days, 3 days that felt like 3 lifetimes. Now they filed back, in their faces serious and resolute, carrying the weight of justice on their shoulders. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked, voice steady. "We have, Your Honor," the foreperson said, standing voice, clear, final. The courtroom held its breath, every soul leaning forward into the moment truth finally spoke. On the charge of accessory to vehicular manslaughter, we find the defendant guilty. Victoria closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek, the first honest one in years. On the charge of obstruction of justice, we find the defendant guilty. Richard Hayes, sitting in the gallery, dropped his head into his hands, shoulders shaking with silent, final grief. On the charge of attempted extortion, we find the defendant guilty. The judge nodded, solemnly, gavel hovering like judgment itself. "The defendant will be remanded into custody, pending sentencing," she said, voice steady. "Sentencing will take place in 2 weeks." As Victoria was led away, shackles clinking softly with each step, she looked back one last time at the gallery, eyes searching, desperate, human. Her eyes found Marcus, sitting quietly in the back row, watching, not with triumph, but with sorrow. She mouthed 2 words, barely visible, but he saw them clear as day. "I'm sorry." Marcus nodded slightly, a nod of acknowledgement, not forgiveness. He believed she was believed. The broken woman in front of him finally meant it. But he also knew that sorry couldn't undo the past. It couldn't bring Sarah Mitchell back. It couldn't erase years of cruelty to others, couldn't unring the bell that had tolled for so many. All it could do was mark the beginning of accountability, the first step on a road she would walk alone. As he walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sunshine, light that felt like absolution, his phone rang. It was Elena, voice bright with the kind of joy that comes from building something beautiful out of ashes. "Mr. Wellington," she said excitedly, "we just got the confirmation. The city approved our proposal for 3 more community centers. 3 more places we can help people who need it. 3 more places Sarah's light will shine." Marcus smiled, genuine warmth flooding through him like sunlight after rain. "That's wonderful, Elena," he said, voice thick with pride. "Sarah's legacy is spreading farther than any of us could have dreamed. And Daniel wants to be involved," Elena continued, voice glowing. "He wants to help us develop the job training programs. He said it's what Sarah would have wanted, said it's how he keeps her with him." "Then we'll make it happen," Marcus said firmly, voice full of certainty. "Whatever it takes for Sarah, for Daniel, for every person who never got the chance she deserved." As he walked to his car, soon warm on his face, heart lighter than it had been in years, Marcus realized something profound. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives crack us open in ways that let the light in. Sometimes betrayal teaches us about trust. Sometimes loss teaches us about value. And sometimes the darkest situations reveal the brightest souls, souls quiet and steady and brave enough to change everything. Elena had been a stranger, a quiet maid nobody paid attention to, but her simple act of courage had changed. Everything had saved him, saved Daniel, saved countless others who would never know her name. It had exposed truth, created justice, and ultimately saved Marcus from a life built on lies, given him a future built on something real. He got in his car and drove back to the estate, back to a home that now felt genuinely peaceful, filled with people who were valued and respected, where kindness was the rule rather than the exception. And as he pulled up to the front entrance, he saw Elena standing there with a group of staff members, all of them laughing together, planning the staff appreciation dinner she'd organized for next week, faces alight with joy that had once been forbidden. She waved when she saw him, bright, open, free. He waved back, grateful beyond words for the day she'd walked into his life, and refused to let cruelty go unchallenged. Because sometimes, one person really can make a difference. One person standing up, one person saying no, one person choosing courage over comfort. That's all it takes to change everything. If this story moved you even half as much as it moved me while bringing it to life, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been the Elena in the room? And subscribe with notifications on. Let's keep telling stories that remind us courage is contagious. See you in the next one.